Today we're looking at the Hilti business model. So Hilti is a power tools manufacturer based in Liechtenstein. It reports in Swiss francs, and its sales for the last couple of years have been about 5 billion US dollars. And it's got a very different business model than all the other power tool manufacturers out there. If you think of people like Bosch and all the others. So with that said, let's get cracking and find out about the Hilti business model. So here you can see, I think this is a really good picture that captures everything. There is a Hilti salesman with Hilti power tools on a construction site, and this is really, really important. We'll come back to this a few more times as we look at the business model. Right. So what is a business model? Fundamentally, who is the customer? What do we offer them? That is the value proposition. How do we deliver that to them? That is the value chain. Why do they buy from us? That is the profit mechanism. So let's have a look at Hilti's. I put it in a convenient bullet point here. So Hilti, its customers are construction companies. These can be large companies, small companies, but very much these are companies who have people getting out on site, getting their hands dirty, making things out of concrete, putting things into concrete, putting light fixtures, fittings, attaching girders, all these things together. Hilti started off as a manufacturer of power tools in the mid-50s, early 60s, something like that. They invented the first jackhammer for digging up tarmac. And what they do is that they guarantee the availability of power tools. So traditionally, a company has had to it goes out, it buys its own power tools for its site teams. But then if a particular tool isn't working, the team can't do the job. So they get downtime, project schedules slip, and they get delayed. How does it do it? It designs and manufactures and rents its own tools. So very much they spend 6% of their annual budget on design. Then they manufacture the power tools, and then they rent them out. And this is the key thing. They do not sell tools to a large extent. They rent tools out to these construction companies. And why do people spend so much money with Hilti? Well, to start with, there's a lower cost of ownership, higher utilization rate. So you're only paying for the power tool for the time you're using it. And that's very similar to Uber's business model, where you're only paying for the use of the car whilst you're actually using it. You're not paying for the car to sit in the garage. If you need a particular power tool and you haven't got a job for 6 months that doesn't use it, that's just capital sitting in your warehouse, doing absolutely nothing whilst it depreciates. And because they have really strong ongoing relationships with their customers, and I'll come into that in a few more minutes as to how that works. So what is the value proposition? Let's see if I can move this up here so we can see everything. So what is the value proposition? Well, Hilti offers customers holes, not hammers. Basically, it's focusing on helping the customers achieve their goals. And the customer actually doesn't really want a hammer. It doesn't want to drill. They want a hole in the wall at the right place at the right time so that they can put a screw or a bolt into it. And the similar sort of thing for lots of other different power tools. And that is helping the customer achieve their goals, what they want to get done in order to progress the project. And remember, the customers are very project focused, task focused, goal focused. We need to get this done at a particular time. And Hilti is providing very much of a system to enable customers to do that. So the value chain, let's unpack this a little bit more now. So basically, Hilti has a direct sales model. It's sending its guys out to the site. If we go back to this initial picture, the guy is out on the site. This is a salesman, and he's saying, okay. So he's saying, the salesman, I've got this problem. And okay, you can use this. And the construction worker is saying, okay, but this is often a problem, and that's often the problem. And how does he do this? And this guy is there collecting all that information. I think 29,000 of these guys are out on construction sites every day. Imagine how much information and data they are collecting, and they are feeding back into Hilti, into the sales management, and thus back to the research and development centers, which enables them to design tools and services that solve pain. Yeah, so Hilti's business model in many ways is based on a really, really deep understanding of the customer. It's not making tools on the basis of 100 or 200 or 1,000 customer discovery interviews. It's making them based on 29,000 customer interactions a day. And so the tools thus fit the customer better, and thus, because it knows exactly what they want, it's an AA and how they use, how they're thrown around on the site, how they get damaged. It's enables them to design out a lot of the problems and the flaws and the ways that machinery and equipment can get damaged, which reduces its life expectancy and its mean time to failure, and thus that enables it to rent out tools at a lower risk. They get damaged less often, they last longer than competitors, and that means that the lifetime value of Hilti's power tools is much greater. And then the profit mechanism, of course, it gives customers access to premium power tools. So Hilti's tools are some of the best in the business, but because you're only, instead of paying 2,000, 5,000 euros for a tool, which is way too expensive when you've got to buy 10 or 20 of them to equip your team, it's saying, okay, you rent it for 20 euros a day, 30 euros a day. And that is a lot cheaper than going and spending 500 or 600 euros on a power tool from a cheaper, lower quality competitor. So Hilti gets people to come in, and then because it's talking to them so often, they stay customers, and that then allows them to have a very high lifetime value, and most critically, it allows customers to do a better job because they've got better tools for cheaper, which helps reduce their costs and their prices in a very competitive, price sensitive industry. So let's now have a look at the business model canvas. This is the Osterwalder canvas, pretty vanilla in this case. So we talked about the construction segments, the construction companies, and what's Hilti offering, the value proposition. So there's guaranteed tool opportunity. You don't need to have any tools, and when you want tools today, you're going to get them today, and you're going to get exactly what you need that is absolutely perfect for the job. You get tools when you need them, and conversely, you don't have tools when you don't need them. And finally, you have quality tools that do a better job. I mean, if you've ever tried drilling a hole in a heavy concrete wall with an underpowered job, you know what a nightmare that is and how long it takes. But if you've got a drill with a better torque, better power rating, and a really good drill bit, it's like you can get straight into the wall like butter, and that can save a lot of time, leading straight back to value for the contractor, who's able to then sort of either keep that as profit or pass it on to his customer in turn in form of a lower bid. So how does Hilti make money? Predominantly from rental, there's software as a service, there's equipment as a service. There are some sales, but broadly speaking, they're not material, as Hilti has moved to this new business model, I think about 15 or 20 years ago. So how do they do it on the sales side? It's direct sales. I mean, they're sending people out to the sites, to the people doing the job, the foreman, the supervisors, the site supervisors, the site engineers, and saying, hey, you need to have less on site. It's never going to be broken. It's always going to be fully maintained. You're not going to have to worry about how many tools you have to buy for a project. You just say, we need this tomorrow, and it's going to be there. And customers love that. And that gives lots of regular on-site interaction. The customer relationship here for Hilti is fairly high maintenance, probably pretty costly if we could break down their financials to understand this, and far more so than the sort of the sell and forget model of a lot of other companies, where possibly the only later interaction you have with them is filling out the warranty form that just goes off, and you never hear anything else. So very dense customer relation, customer centric organization. Let's move across now onto the production side, onto how Hilti delivers all this. So I usually start here on the key resources, and Hilti started off very early on as very early on as a research driven organization, coming up with new tools, a very product innovation, product driven company, trying to come up, and that built the company up to a certain level. They were first for a number of power tools, had a reputation for quality under quite a lot of pressure from the German Mittelstand companies across the border from Liechtenstein. The second thing, the key resource, is the family ownership. Hilti was started by two brothers, Eugene and Martin, back in 1940s, 1950s. Eugene died in the early 50s, quite young. Oh, he might have been 50 when he died, and then Martin died in the 90s when he was 80 something. And what the way that they then structured it was that basically all their sons, grandsons, grandchildren, granddaughters, don't want to be sexist here, all of their descendants, instead of splitting the shareholding further and further into smaller and smaller packages, like people like the Fords and the DuPonts have done, they said, right, okay, everyone is putting their shares into a family trust. The family trust owns the company in perpetuity. So the company has no need for long-term engagement with the stock market. It's not listed. It doesn't have the pressures from investment managers. It can look to see what it thinks is going to be the right thing for Hilti, for the family trust, and that then gives it very much long-term stability to take big gambles, big steps towards where it wants to be. And this is possibly the key thing that allowed it to move to this fleet management type of business model. The other key resources, the premium quality tools, as far as I understand, I don't think that much is outsourced to low cost manufacturers in the Far East, which allows them to reverse engineer the tools and set up shadow factories. That keeps a lot of the knowledge in house, and then sort of feeds back into the R&D. How do we make it better? How does that deliver more value back to the customers? And then finally, the sales network. I mean, with 29,000 salesmen and employees around the world going out every day, that's something that's pretty hard to replicate. Because if you think what Hilti's got in every country, 50 plus countries, they've got to have at least one warehouse with several millions dollars of power tools in it. At least they've got to be able to manage that. They've got to repair all those power tools, and then they've got to have relationships with all the major contractors and construction companies, going out talking to them day on day. Most other people in a similar business, they have the manufacturing facilities in Germany or Japan or the US, for example, such as Stanley. Might be British, I'm not sure on that one. Sorry about that. Should have checked before I started talking. And they manufacture, and then they send them out to distributors like B&Q, Wix, Ace Hardware, all the different hardware stores, to wholesalers. But then they don't have that direct face-to-face interaction of the customer, and they don't. And if they wanted to move to this model, they've not only got to break contracts with distributors, because they're cutting the distributors out of the business model, but they've got to invest tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in setting up this sales network and the fleet management network. And so this comes down to the key activities. I mean, Which product innovation has been part of Hilti for 70 years now. It's core to the business. But over the last couple of decades, as Hilti has moved to this business model, sales management has become increasingly important. Sales has always been something that they had to do. Moving from selling through distributors to selling to the end user directly has no doubt been a bit of a challenge. But the big one has been this idea of fleet management, of renting out power tools. Because before that, they used to hand over the power tool, the equipment to the customers and never see it again, never really worry about it again. There might be some warranty or maintenance calls, but 95% of tools never came back. Now, 100% of tools come back to their maintenance and repair and warehouse sites on a regular basis. Hilti has to maintain those tools. They have to maximize the utilization. How much of the time can we keep those tools on hire? How do we do that? That was a whole set of skills, core competencies, if you want to call them that they didn't have as a company. And that represented a substantial risk to them as they adopted this business model. Are we able to do that effectively? Can we do it well? And I think that they probably started off with some trials in some countries, saw that it worked, worked incredibly well, because as they started doing this, they discovered that customer loyalty went up 5x. Now, they don't release the figures on what that 5 times customer loyalty means. Does it mean that customers stayed with Hilti 5 times as long? Lifetime value suddenly gets 5 times larger. Wow, that's amazing. Do they buy 5 times more? Again, pretty good. On most metrics, that is going to be amazing. And that, the fleet management, comes from the regular on-site interaction. Finally, the key partners. If you think about your business to business sales model, unlike B2C, you're not selling to an individual, you're selling into a buying center. And so when you're talking to the people in the buying center, most of the on-site users are users, as it happens. They might not be the economic champion. So Hilti has to sell to the on-site users. It has to sell to the site supervisors and managers who are making decisions, and to the project managers and to the financial people inside the business who are seeing what is going to be the most cost effective, how to drive up the company return on capital, ROI, profit margin, etc. But the key ones are the users, because when the guys on the site are saying, I get more done faster, I deliver projects on time and on schedule, that is rocket fuel for everybody else in the organization, because that means that they can make promises to customers, deliver more, deliver faster, get a better reputation, and thus win more business, which is absolutely brilliant. Finally, cost structure, nothing particularly exciting here. You've got the R&D, 6% of revenue. Manufacturing, I'm not sure of the split there, is likely to be reasonably substantial. The sales force, oops, I spelled that slightly wrong. I will correct that before I post online. The sales force is large, is significant expense, and you can ask, okay, does the cost of maintaining my own sales force outweigh the cost of not selling through middlemen? Because then I am able to scrap a lot of the marketing and the direct sales cost. But again, the sales force feeds in this regular on-site interaction, feeding into the R&D centers, which makes the fleet management system easier, which gives more of this, which increases happy customers, which generates more and more rental. So you're seeing the key drivers really coming out there for Hilti. And then finally, the equipment maintenance and management. And again, Hilti has an increasing advantage here, because they're not only designing into great power tools, but they're also increasingly designing into power tools that are good for rental and frequent reservice maintenance, to keep them at the high utilization rate, which helps Hilti generate its return on capital a lot more effectively. And that's something that will become over time an increasingly large moat that other companies will find difficult to overcome. So guys, that's the Hilti business model. I specialize in helping companies create innovative business models. And the basic idea is this. You can come up with new products. The average new product in the US in 2012 cost $75 million to set up and get to the market. But in its first year, it only produced $40 million of revenue. And 19 out of 20 new products in the US fail. 19 out of 20 worldwide fail within 2 years. However, a business model, Apple came up with a new business model in the early 2000s that turned it from a company in the low billions to a company worth 1.4 trillion in the first months of 2020. Amazon, another $1 trillion company coming from a new business model. Google, another $1 trillion company coming from a new business model. New business models create value. New products keep you level with the competition. Hilti, in this case, was very good at product innovation. It stayed level pegging with the competition until it came up with a new business model. That's when it started accelerating away. So if you want to create an amazing business that really leaves the competition behind, you do not spend your time thinking about new products. You think about, how do I create new business models that are going to transform my industry, transform my sector, and leave all of my existing competitors who I may be level pegging with similar market shares, so that they have a fraction, 10%, 5% of my market share. That's the goal. And if you want to do that, send me an email, dennis@dennis-oakley.com. Head over to dennis-oakley.com, or just have a look at me on LinkedIn. Look at more of my business model innovation videos on YouTube. Thanks for listening today. Have an awesome day and go out, make a ruckus.